All right, happy engineer, you are in for a treat. Welcome back. And Anese, welcome back to you, to the show. Round two, it was 2021, episode 23. You were
23.
last here on the show, which it'll be 150 episodes later. Holy smokes.
Oh
That's
my
amazing.
goodness. Oh my
That's
goodness.
I have loved your work ever since I first picked up Contagious Culture, which was in the halls of Zing Train with Ari in Ann Arbor, Michigan. But let's quickly refresh IEP, what it is, and maybe what's evolved since December when you and I last talked in 2021, but even since the beginning, just to quickly pull that thread again of
Yeah.
energetic presence.
IEP stands for our intentional energetic presence. Your intentional energetic presence, which is all about how we show up. It's the energetic presence we bring to everything we do. So the way that I meet with my team, the way that I prepare my taxes, the way that I do the dishes,
Mm,
the way I sit with my child, we are always creating an experience internally and externally. And the more present and intentional we are as we move into any kind of engagement, that's going to help create either an experience that is grounded and lovely and more expansive and effective, or something that's just we kind of miss it and it creates
yeah.
stuff. So that's like the root of it. And as you'll recall, there's, we look at their intentions, we look at their energy, we look at their presence. There's an entire methodology around it to really support people and not just thinking it's a nice idea, but actually learning how to get it into their bodies. And
Hmm.
that's kind of the quick
It's so good.
refresh.
Go back, listen to episode 23, Happy Engineer, if you want to get super deep on those topics, and grab Anese's books, both of them, Contagious Culture, Contagious You. Your work, this idea of IEP, if I was going to say one thing that has shifted the quality of life that I experience moment to moment, day to day, it is in direct correlation to how well I'm practicing this or not. I really believe that. Now, yes, there's other strategies and maybe other language or models that I would layer in to my
Sure.
thinking about how IEP shows up in my life, but it is exactly your work. And when I'm not doing it, I get frustrated and overwhelmed, or
Yeah.
just I'm just not in my own life. It's like I feel disconnected.
Yeah.
And when I am doing it, even hard things are very rewarding. And so in a sense, it feels super timeless. And that's
Mhm.
why I'm curious for you in this journey. Has the work changed?
Yes, the work has evolved. So the work has
Mm,
evolved. So at the root of the work is still your intentions, your energy, and your
yeah.
present. It is timeless. I love it that you just said that because it's timeless and it's also situationless. Like it can be in any situation. So our ability to connect with ourselves, to be present, to be thoughtful about our intentions
Hmm.
and what we want to have happen, our ability to manage our energy and really take care of the energy that we're bringing to the table so that we have a good experience and also create a helpful experience, as well as have the energy and the stamina to actually do the thing. Like all of that, that's timeless. It's 22 years this year that I've been doing this work
Wow.
self-employed in this
Yes.
company.
Yes.
And even further back, because I think for me the IEP work actually started when I was like 14 years old with things I started to notice, but it's been 22 official years, and we have gone through cycles where we try and get really fancy with the work and we expand and we go, okay, we're going to do all these other things with the company as well as the IEP work, and then we always come back to the simple notion of if we can get people to be practicing their IEP and really have them understand the methodology and embody it, then every single thing every other skill,
Hmm.
conversations, communication, conflict, strategy, feedback, all leadership, culture change, everything else becomes that much easier. And so,
Yes.
when I look at how has it changed? I mean, a lot has changed since 2021, since you and I last spoke. I started an initiative called the Positive Energy Workplace Initiative, which is all about making sure that we're creating organizations that are positively contagious cultures,
Yes.
obviously,
Yes.
but also they're authentically not toxic
Mm.
positivity, but authentically positive organizations where people can show up at their best, can have their best work, can think and focus on the right things, can create more innovative and creative solutions, but really at the end of the day, feel good. That's what we're looking
Yes.
for.
Yes.
We've added staff, we've built an app, we have a platform, we've built 70 additional frameworks and tools to support the methodology. So there's a big change.
Wow.
But at the end of the day, that method is still the method. It's
Right
just,
at the core.
what is happening? Are you in healthcare? Okay, great. Are you an engineer? Okay, great. Are you a teacher? Are you a designer? Okay, great. We're going to give you different tools to help you think through the methodology. It's going to help make it real, but the core methodology is the same. It's all like the core piece.
Positive Energy Workplace Initiative. And you made a really interesting distinction, not toxic positivity. Would you expand on that? What is the distinction? How do you know when you've crossed over from an authentic positivity into a toxic positivity?
Oh, it's such an important question. So toxic positivity to me is when our company may be going through, your company is going through something really, really hard. Or maybe, and we've seen a lot of this in the last couple of years, layoffs, mergers, like all sorts of things. And so simple toxic positivity is this: oh my gosh, I broke my leg. Wow, that's so great. That must have happened for a reason. You're going to get to relax for a little while. Clearly, the universe wanted you to take a load off, right? Like, and that's a really extreme exaggerate, but I've actually heard it said.
Yeah.
I've actually literally heard that with someone who broke their leg. People were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened, but look what all the good stuff that's going to happen. Or a more realistic example that I would see just anytime is something happens, it's hard in an organization, and the leaders go, all right, well, that was hard, but we're going to keep going and we're going to make the best out of this and it's going to be fine. Or somebody comes and says, hey, I am not really feeling safe around giving feedback, or psychological safety feels really low in our organization right now. And the leaders don't acknowledge it. They just bypass and go, oh, well, we're all doing our best, or that's your own personal work to do, or whatever it might be. So toxic positivity to me is when you force something that's not authentic. And authentic positivity happens when we actually do the hard work to have the hard conversations. Yeah. So for example, my team and I, we use our own work. We use our tools. A lot of the stuff that comes out is from stuff that happens on our team or with our clients, where we go, oh, wow, we need to create a tool or a framework to support that. Yeah. Authentic positivity for our team might mean our team gets into conflict because something really hard has happened or something disappointing has happened. The worst thing I can do as the CEO of the company is go in and be like, okay, guys, everything's going to be great. And we're good. And everyone just work harder. And we've got this. It's the worst thing I can do. The best thing I can do is go in and go, ooh, that stung. This conflict is real. There's definitely tension here, whatever it might be, to name it, and then to stay present with it and then work through the team with it together. On the other side of that is true authentic positivity, but we can't bypass it.
If we take that one example of a culture problem, a culture issue, I don't know what the right word would be, toxic positivity, I'm sure we could list many others of the kinds of things that people describe as toxic cultures. And so how do you make an assessment or come to a conclusion on whether or not a particular company, fill in the name, do they have a culture problem? You know, is the culture of this organization part of the root cause of their inability to perform or grow or get results, et cetera? Or is it a strategy problem or a marketplace issue or fill in the blank, AI's just disrupting something, blah, blah, blah. How do we decide and know clearly the culture's the issue?
Okay, I'm just going to riff. If you're having a hard time retaining your people, let's just say your people are leaving and they're not talking to you before they leave. This is a very big sign you have a culture problem. So a number that came out recently from Gallup was they talked about, 52% of people who leave an organization, who exit their organizations, say the company could have done something to have kept them at the company. 52%.
Interesting.
And it usually comes back to something to do with the relationships between the managers and leaders. Now, 50% of people that leave say that they're leaving the manager or the leader. It's not the company. That's a big deal. Now, what's interesting to me with that number is that out of the 52% who said the company could have done something to fix it, only 1 in 3 of those people actually said anything to the company before they left. Do you see the absurdity of like 52% of the workforce is leaving, but only a third of those people are actually communicating before they leave? There's a problem. I'm unhappy. I don't have a good relationship. I need help. I'm going to leave. And so then what happens is we have all this hard time with retention. So if you're noticing that you're having a hard time retaining your people, that is a really good sign there's something wrong with your culture or something off with your culture. I don't like to say wrong or right, but off. If you're having a hard time attracting talent, I think that's always really interesting because a lot of times companies have a hard time attracting talent. They have this blind spot. They don't realize that the company, the way it's being talked about, like on Glassdoor or out in the world. We just met somebody from a company that we're not working with that company, but they literally said, I would never want any of my friends or family to work for this company.
Wow.
And I said, well, did you tell the company that? Well, no, we don't want to tell the company that because we'll get punished. Okay, well, that is a problem. So if you're having a hard time attracting people, retaining, like that's really obvious. But one of my big things I'm always watching for is if your teams are careful, if you're not getting hard feedback, if you're not having people disagree with you, there's probably something around psychological safety happening, conflict avoidance, because a sign of a good culture actually is the culture where I can say to my boss or my partner or whoever, hey, I really disagree with this. I don't like what's happening. And I can get into conflict and it's going to be okay. We're going to get on the other side of that. So that's a way to look at it. Information hoarding. If you start to notice like these silos happening and people aren't sharing information, or they're trying to look really important, or they have meeting FOMO, which meeting FOMO, I don't know if you've heard of this, but meeting FOMO is I want to make sure I'm in as many meetings as possible so I look really important. That's a culture problem. A really big one that we see a lot is you're doing this is a big one. You'll appreciate this one. You're doing training initiatives and you're bringing in all these maybe really famous, big coaching and training programs or tools. And you keep bringing in tools, but what's happening is you're not getting the return on investment from them. It's not working, or people are using those tools as a bat. So an example of that might be you bring in a communication training of some kind, and now I have been trained in how to communicate this way. However, my IEP, because that's really what's happening, my intentions, my energy, and my presence when I'm actually doing this tool is not clean. And so therefore, I'm now using this tool as a bat. The company's not going to get the return on investment, but they also often are doing more harm than good, because then the people go, oh, well, it's a flavor of the month. Now I don't trust my leadership because they just put me through this, so stuff like that.
Yeah, this is such a good list. I know you could probably riff all day, Anese, but I'm remembering back to my days as a senior manager at Whirlpool Corporation and just different pieces of this that were present, nodding and checking all these boxes like, yep, we had that. Yep. And the meeting FOMO, it wasn't even looking important as much as fear that they were going to make some decision without your input. And if you weren't in the room, then you would be left out of key decisions. That was another big one. But okay, let me ask you then, is it true that culture runs downhill? Meaning the senior most people are the ones who will ultimately establish whether or not a culture changes or is what it is. I'll pause there first. Is that a true statement, would you say?
Yes, I would like to say, yes, it is true that culture runs downhill. I also do very strongly believe culture is impacted at the entry level as well. So if you read Contagious Culture and Contagious You, the premise is that every single one of us is a culture. So if I am the front desk greeter in a humongous organization, or the person who's letting people in security in the lobby, or I'm the CEO, I am having huge impact on my culture because how I show up is creating the culture. Now, I used to have this really lovely, idealistic, maybe a little bit naive, but I still really believe it, which was that everybody is equally responsible for the culture, and culture can really change from the ground up. And I still believe that to a point, but what I have really learned, especially over the last couple of years, is that the more responsibility you have, the higher you are in leadership, especially at the executive level, you are really setting the tone and you have more power to affect culture really, really quickly. And we've seen this, Zach, because we have done things with organizations where we maybe have worked with one division of the organization or lower level of leadership because they really wanted this work, but then they haven't had the buy-in. One of the most common things that I can hear that scares me half to death when I hear it from a leader is, oh, well, this doesn't really apply to me, but it applies to my people. That is usually a sign
Oh,
to me that your culture, like there's a leadership challenge there. And so we've seen where we've done really beautiful work with maybe one division of a group, but because they didn't have at the higher level people paying
yeah,
attention to how they were showing up, it kept polluting. And so it makes it just harder. It can happen. Culture change can happen. Change can happen by one person starting to change their
yeah,
behaviors and showing up. But boy, is it so much easier and much enjoyabler and less exhausting
yeah.
if you have leaders at the top really being committed to here's what we're going to do as an organization and then really following through on that.
Okay. So a little bit of a both and that you can, any
Yeah.
individual, create a culture change around you. It begins with you. And the higher you go in influence and an organizational hierarchy, if we want to use that word, the burden of your IEP and your culture creation is higher because it'll have a disproportionate impact.
It's a burden and it's also this amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
Because if you see that culture change doesn't have to be hard. Depending on the size of the organization, culture change can take 3 years, 5 years, it just depends. It also can happen very, very quickly, especially if your team is smaller and especially if the executives are on board.
Totally bought in.
I think sometimes when people talk about culture transformation, their thing is it's going to be this huge thing. And then there's like, they hire all these consultants and it's like this huge animal. Yes, to a point, unless you've got your executives so aligned with their IEP and their intentions for what they want to create with the culture, and they're open and they're showing up in a way that's creating more safety for the organization to actually create the change.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that hard. It really doesn't.
As an individual engineering leader, let's say, well, I'll use I'm a senior manager at Whirlpool and I'm not really thrilled with the culture around me or above me if that was my experience. And I came to you, Anese, and said, hey, is it really worth it? Can I really make a big enough difference by myself to seek to create change in this environment or this toxic workplace that I'm in? And I don't mean to say Whirlpool is that place, just using my example, but like whatever company you're at, it's like, is it worth it? Or should I just pull the ripcord, join the 52% of people who don't say anything or the 2/3 who don't say anything and find a new place. Go find a place where the culture's already good. That's the easier path. It sure feels like the easier path. So how would you make that assessment? Is it worth it to lean into this work, or should you just go look for a place that's already?
All right, so here's the deal. There's something that I started to notice last year that was very interesting when someone like in that scenario would come to us and they would say, we want to create culture change. We have a real problem. We've got our people leaving. We need your help. We know this work is important. And then they would say, but we don't have leadership support. It got to the point, we just had a lot of that happen last year. And it just like consult after consult. They weren't the decision makers. They weren't the ones that were going to fund it. They weren't the ones that were going to champion it, but they wanted us to come in. Well, we need a champion. We need a funder. We need a stakeholder. And so usually if I could get to the executive leadership and the people who would champion and fund it, and I could have a conversation with them, oftentimes we could get them to start to bring the work in. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. They don't see the value in it, or they don't see it's a problem. And because nobody's actually saying, hey, there's a problem, they don't know it's a problem. So it's not that these executives are bad. They just don't know. And if people aren't talking to each other, how are they supposed to know? So sometimes they know. Sometimes executives do know that there's a problem. They just don't. They don't know how to address it. They don't want to address it. They don't have the time, or they're just hoping it's going to go away. That's one of the things we heard a lot of last year was like, well, we're hoping it's going to change next quarter. It doesn't change on its own.
The culture, just poof, it's just going to change.
Yeah. Poof, it's just going to change. Or they go, oh, we're going to just do a RIF. We're going to do a reduction in force, get rid of the old, bring in new. And then hopefully that will help us reset our culture. Well, the problem with that is that you take yourself everywhere you go. So if there's a culture problem in the organization, you got to deal with it at the root. And we got to the point where I started to say, do you need help learning how to protect yourself? Or do you need help learning how to optimize your culture? And this became a common theme last year because a lot of the people in the position you're talking about would say, actually, I need help to help my people and my team protect themselves from the culture and the toxicity that's going on so we can focus on our work. So that is
Interesting.
IEP in a protective mode, which is learning how to hold your space, learning how to take really good care of yourself, learning how to become more
Yeah.
resilient. There's a really good training element for that. But it broke my heart because where we want you is we want you in optimization mode. So
Yeah.
if we could get support from the rest of the organization, we can go into optimization, but otherwise we're in protection. So is it worth doing the work? For you personally, if you're deciding to stay at that company, it's super worth you doing the
Yeah.
work because you're going to need to be able to protect yourself. And then you're going to have to decide if you want to live your life that way and protecting yourself. And in my experience, most people leave.
Hmm.
Is it worth doing the work if you can get sponsorship and you can get support to bring it in? 100%, because as we've been talking, it doesn't have to be this big, huge, hard, complicated thing, but it does need truth. It needs some work.
Everyone goes through some form of their own discovery experience where they recognize and realize the importance of intention, energy, and presence in their day-to-day life. And it could be encountering your work that gets that into their heart and mind for the first time. You mentioned earlier that you've been doing this as a business for 22 years, but you first really began it when you were 14.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me the first thing you remember where it clicked for you that IEP was the work?
My family had just gone through a terrible, terrible breakup. I was really upset. I was really disgruntled. I was very grumpy. And part of the impact of the breakup was that I was the oldest of 4 little girls, and I started working to help pay the rent because my family had split. Like we lost our church, we lost our family, we lost everything almost overnight. It
Wow.
was a really, really, that was a really traumatic experience.
Yeah.
I was working at Baskin Robbins and I was really grumpy that day that I had to work. And we had worked out a special situation with the school so I could work a couple hours a week. And I remember going in to scoop chocolate. I was scooping world-class chocolate ice cream. And I was just like, I can't believe that this has happened. My life is ruined. I can still feel it in my body when I say it. I can still like remember that feeling of that little girl. And I went into the bin or into the freezer to grab the ice cream. And on the second scoop, the thought occurred to me, what if what's happening right now doesn't have to ruin my life? What if actually I could become amazing from this? What if this actually made me strong? What if I decided to be happy and I decided to do something really great? Oh my gosh, what if I became like a really amazing human being and I did great? Like, what if? And this was in like a second. I think it was just this gift that I needed as this little girl to move through that period of time. But that was my first experience of feeling what a decision could look like, deciding to be happy. And my first experience of starting to realize what an intention was without having any language around that. And I remember coming out of that freezer box with the second scoop and put a little pink spoon in it and handing it over and a little sugar cone on top to the guy. And the guy gave me a $5 tip, which back then that was like a lot of money. I remember thinking, I'm onto something with this. And that little girl was different after that shift. Because I remember walking home and thinking, well, if I was going to create a life that I wanted, what if I could actually build something from this? And then from there, I just really started to get more obsessed with performance and intention without knowing what intention was and how do you take care of yourself. And then I really, I went on to get my degree in kinesiology because I felt intuitively there was something to the body and physicality and being able to take care of yourself that was really, and so the work has just evolved from there. But that's
so cool.
That's where I think it started for me.
Is there a single action or way for a person to create that catalyst moment if they have not had it?
I think for me, I was open, but I felt pretty broken, and I was open and I think it was a real blessing. I've had moments like that since then, like during the pandemic, after I wrote a book calling the world contagious, and then a contagious pandemic came out 2 months later. Like that was a moment for me where I went, oh boy, you and I talked about that in 2021.
Yeah.
I remember our company had we devoted 2020 to keynotes and book stuff and being on stages, and then COVID hit, and a lot of people were like, we can't send people books during a pandemic, calling them contagious, and I was like, oh my gosh, like please no. But I had a period of time where I was back on the floor again and going, oh my gosh, what's going to happen now? And everything at that time had been dependent on me being in rooms with people. We hadn't taken everything virtual yet. And I can remember that same feeling coming to me of like, okay, hold on a second. What if this doesn't have to be the end? Like, what if this actually helps you build and make something better? And we just had the same thing happen in 2023. So I feel like every couple of years, I get some good whack that then wakes me up. So this is a part of the IEP work. It's not about bypassing. It's not about going, oh, wow, that really hurt.
Right.
Okay, let's move on. That's toxic positivity. After Contagious You came out and COVID dropped, had I been like, woohoo, this is the best thing in the world. Well, it must be happening for me. That would have been like a complete spiritual bypass. So I processed being on the floor, and then I learned from it and I rebooted and I got up and I made the work better. We had something big happen last year for all of us as a team. It was unexpected. It was not my favorite things ever happened, but I will tell you that thing happening, same idea. Well, what if actually this could make it better? And now the result of that is we have a very robust app. We've got an ability to scale the work that does not have to be dependent on one or two big clients. If we stay open to ourselves and we're willing to tell ourselves the truth and we're willing to sit in our pain and then we're willing to get curious about like, okay, what might there be here for me? I think that's where the magic happens.
So good. I'm very grateful for whichever angel dropped that thought into 14-year-old Anese's mind to plant the seed of what is now the IEP method and its impact. Wow. Anese, where can somebody who's new to this go and discover what it is we've been talking about this last half hour? Where's the best place for an engineer, a leader who wants to explore and or already knows I need to get this for myself or my organization? Where can they find you?
Oh, thank you. Okay, so if you go to activechoices.com, that's our website. We've got some fun little explainer videos.
Awesome.
And then we have these things, Zach, once a month, we do executive forums where senior leaders and executives from companies can come. We don't charge for them. They're by invitation. You have to register for an invitation, but you can come, and every month I do a different topic based upon what's happening that we're seeing with our clients, give them a couple of tools to think about. It's a combination of service, awareness, and then just building community with this work. But they're welcome to come to that too.
What a tremendous opportunity. So Happy Engineer, I'm talking to you. Go click the links in the show notes, get to know Anese's work, buy copies of her books. You will not regret it. And definitely, if this is something that's inspiring to you, go register for that opportunity. What a cool place to be.
There's one other thing. Can I say one other thing?
Please, as many as you want.
I have so many things to say. The bottom line of it is this: creating authentically positive energy workplaces. Culture change does not have to be this huge enterprise-wide initiative that involves consulting and coaching and expensive stuff. You actually can create it with intention and really thoughtfully going through what are the tools we're going to make sure we're using underneath all the other tools we're using.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
Okay. Anese, questions. Questions are important. We talk about them on this podcast all the time. And as we wrap up today, knowing we all want better answers in our career and in our life and in our relationships in these areas, what for you is the most important question that we need to be asking ourselves right now? What would you lead the Happy Engineer with today?
Am I living in a way that is in integrity with myself? And if not, not making myself wrong for it, but getting curious about what am I making more important than my own integrity with myself? Oof. Because nothing good is going to come from me making myself wrong for not being in integrity. Like actually nothing good comes from making myself wrong. So instead, if I can be loving with myself and go, all right, Anese, what is getting in the way of you being fully in alignment and in integrity with yourself? If I can look there, I think there's gold. And I feel like everything can be brought back to those questions to kind of get us reset.
So good. Am I living in a way that is in full integrity with myself? And if not, what is getting in the way of that? Anese,
what am I making more important?
What am I making
This is even better. What am I making more important? Like what is getting in the way is one way to say it. That works too. But if you do that little refinement, what am I making more important?
Oof.
Living in a
Yeah.
way like that, to me, that gets me. Like, okay, there's
Yeah.
something I'm making more important. It might be necessary for the time being. That I might have something going on with my kids that right now, that's the thing I need to be paying attention to more than, you know what I mean? So
Mm.
I
I
think it's
love
a
that
little bit
distinction.
after. Yeah.
Really, really good. More
Good.
convicting for sure. I feel that. Anese, you have been so generous today. We're over the planned time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. I love your work. Keep doing it. And if there's any way the Happy Engineer community or Zach White can support you on it, please let me know. Maybe in 2.5 years we can do round 3.
Oh, for sure. Well, let's do it sooner.
Amazing.
We'll do it sooner, hopefully. All right. Thanks, you guys.